What's up, y'all? It's Austin Lamson. I've had a lot of conversations about buy downs, right? Like if sellers are willing to negotiate, what do we do? So, Jody, this is the one I promised you. It was great to see you this weekend, and I wanted to be sure I got this out as quickly as possible. So, of course, I've got a presentation to share. So, what we're really talking about is if they're credits, right? How do we make some of this data work for you? So, we're talking about ways to buy down, right? Ways to buy down. So, when we're talking about this overall, again, we're talking about properties that like maybe it's been on the market for a minute. Is there room for negotiation and what is in your best interest? So let's go for this together, right? Um, First thing I just want to point out is that this is a true negotiation. It's not always a given. All right. So temporary buy down. So you've seen me do videos on this before. So a temporary buy down is where let's say your interest rate is 7% today and the seller buys it down to 6% and it's for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. It's a crescendo, right? So if you did a 3 year buy down and you start at 7, 1, 2, 3 would be 4 for the first year, 5 the second year, 6 the third year, and they would move in the fourth year back to 7%. You still get a fixed rate. Now that again, that can be 1 to 3% lower than the market. It still is a long-term fixed rate. And if you refinance before all the money is used for this, then the difference is pride towards principal, right? So the cons is that it's temporary, right? So your payments are going to adjust in the future, right? This is not a long-term plan. This is a short-term plan, and you still have to qualify at today's interest rate. And the credit cap is the same for any IPC, so that's interested party contribution. So if you're asking for a credit for your temporary buy down and then you want a credit for repairs because the pink toilet needs to be replaced, right? There's not necessarily enough money to do this. How is this done? Through closing, the seller gives a credit towards the temporary buy down. It's a separate account that's held, so it's not the standard ledger. It moves from the standard ledger into this account, and that is given to offset. So in that example that I gave, where it was a 3-1 buy down, we started at 7, we're down to 4. The first year they're paying the differential in interest as if you were paying 4% and the real rate is 7. So it's like this piggy bank that's used to offset your payment each month. And that's why if you don't use all of it, let's say you refinance, it's paid down to your principal balance. So that's a great thing because you don't lose that money. So giving you some examples, what if you did a 1.5 house with a standard sale versus the same thing with a 2-1 buy down versus what if you just use that $25,000 to buy down the price? Now, I wanted to give you an example of what if there wasn't a credit yet available? What if this is a property that is hot and just getting on the market? Well, what that looks like is you could build that credit into your sales price and ask for it back. So you see, step one, 20% down, we're using 6.5 for this example. Your payment is about 8,900, just under $9,000 a month. If we move to the 2-1 temporary buy down, your first year is going to be as if it's 4.5%. Now you see that that APR is still in the sixes because that's your true honest rate in the end if you never refinance. But that's going to move your payment down over $1,000 a month, over $1,000 a month. And if you're a first-time home buyer, maybe that's what you need to be able to fund improvements, or maybe that's what you need to get used to things until your tax advantages kick in, right? Now, conversely, what if you're like, hey, there's $25,000 on the table. I'd rather just pay it and have a lower sales price. That's awesome. You can totally do that. However, if you see here, your payment moves from 89.59 to 88.14, right? It's about $145 a month. Whereas if it did the 2-1 buy down, it's really getting that. Your choice, your education, what you want to do with it. So let's talk about a permanent buy down. A permanent buy down is points, right? Where they're permanently buying down your loan. This lower monthly payment is permanent for as long as you have it, right? And you're going to qualify off this. So let's say the rate was 6.5 and they bought it down to 5.5. You get that for the entire length of the loan. And you also qualify. So that might help qualifications, right? But the con is if you refinance, that money is gone. This is a one-time event. It didn't move into the separate account like a temporary buy down does. It's moving from A to B, and then that money is absorbed and used in closing. Still, it's going to impact the other credits that you might get, right? So again, that pink toilet costs $5,000, but if they're giving you $25,000 already, you might hit the cap that's allowed by federal regulations. So the seller gives this credit through escrow, through your closing company towards your buy down. So it's going to show that you paid a point and it's going to show that they gave you a credit for that. you will want to check with your accountant if can be a tax write-off or not. Because on acquisition debt, current tax laws, the time of filming this, which is June 2026, is that acquisition debt with points, the points can be written off. It's probably going to show you're in 1098. That's the statement of interest, but do talk to see if that's something you could still write off and to get a tax benefit. What does this look like? Again, similar example, right? We did $1,000,005 house, 20% down, 6.5, and we did $1,000,005 house where we increased the sales price to get money down back to it towards this closing versus what if we simply brought that down? So in our first example, again, we're at the 89, just under $9,000 a month, 89.59. And if they bought it down for us and they bought it down by 25,000, it doesn't necessarily always move it a full 1% interest rate. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on the market. It's going to depend on your parameters. It's going to depend. It's not necessarily a one for one the way the temporary buy down was. In this example, though, you're getting things lower down by about over 100 and about $20 a month. So that is a long-term savings that you have. And there's a little bit of delta in the cash to close because you're increasing the loan amount as well. But if you just took that money off the top, was that better for you or not? You can see you have a little bit lower sales price and you have a little bit lower property taxes, which means you have a little bit lower monthly payment. You have to decide which is best for you for that cash overall. All right, here's another example. A lot of people are talking about investment properties and they're like, oh, I want to put 20% down. Well, on investment properties, especially, the more you put down or the less you put down, the rates are really, really impacted. Going from 20 to 30% down on an investment property rate can be very significant. So let's think about this, right? If you're like, oh gosh, it's not going to cash flow at 20% down, but that's the money I have. And we know that 30% down gets a better interest rate. Well, what if the seller buys down that differential? Right? Kind of like in a similar example before, they're buying down those points, they're buying down those differential and costs for you. You're going to qualify with that lower monthly payment. It's going to be for the entire life of the loan. So these are a lot of things that can work in your favor. Now, the con, again, if you refinance in a shorter time, you might not see as much benefit for that, right? You still have this credit cap. Everything we're talking about has this credit cap. There's only so much money that the sellers are allowed to give you before it impacts and it's considered an inducement to sell, right? Now, from a functionality standpoint, the seller is going to simply give that credit towards closing. So here's an example of what this looks like, right? So if you're at a 20% down investment property, again on our $1,000,005 property, and in this example, I didn't want to build anything different in the sales price. I just wanted to show the difference on a cash basis. So, but normally you'd be over 7%. Well, it'd move about a quarter point in interest rate, and you can see that differential in between 20 and 30% down is significant, right? I mean, it is over $1,000 a month. But if you went ahead and just bought it down, you're going to have that differential in a lower monthly payment, right? It's going to bring it down a couple $100 a month and give you that benefit overall. So, what you're going to know here overall is there's a lot of ways to get things done, right? I want to be sure that you're informed, that you're educated, and that if there's any money on the table or money that we can build in for you, that we're using it as best as possible. Let me know what I can do to help you or anyone else. It's Austin Lamson, and I will talk to you soon.